There are a few places in London where the city noise fades, and Highgate Cemetery is one of those. Important note, the cemetery is maintained by donations and volunteers, so please consider going to highgatecemetery.org and donate. Highgate Cemetery opened in 1839, when London was overflowing, and not just with life, but with death, and the city's churchyards were full. The Victorians decided to build what they called the Magnificent Seven, 7 great garden cemeteries around the edge of London, and Highgate was to be the grandest of them all. The man behind it was Stephen Gary, an architect and social reformer who believed that even in death, people deserved dignity and beauty. Highgate was designed not just as a burial ground, but a landscaped garden, a place where the living could walk amongst the dead, reflect, and find peace. It quickly became one of Victorian London's most fashionable addresses. To be buried here was to be a statement of taste, wealth, and respectability. The Victorians approached death with ceremony. Their mourning rituals were elaborate, their architecture symbolic. Every angel, every urn, every obelisk carried meaning, be it hope, sorrow, or eternity. Highgate became a kind of open-air museum of grief and art, filled with stories of ambition, tragedy, and love. The cemetery's paths were once patrolled by uniformed keepers, and even horse-drawn hearse service operated within these very gates. In its early decades, the cemetery also featured carefully curated planting. Cedars and cypresses were chosen deliberately to invoke the idea of eternal life, echoing ancient Roman burial customs. By the early 1900s, however, fashion had shifted. Cremation was becoming more and more popular, and Highgate, built on the assumption that burials would go on forever, began to struggle financially. Many of the crumbling tombs you see today are the result of long periods of neglect, when only foxes, ivy, and the occasional owl were still paying attention. At the heart of Highgate lies Egyptian Avenue, one of its most extraordinary features. Built in the late 1830s, it reflects a Victorian fascination with ancient Egypt. To them, Egypt symbolized eternity, a civilization that conquered death itself. The avenue's grand archways and lotus-carved iron doors lead into a circle of vaults, a place of stillness, where families could purchase private resting spaces for generations. Here the light falls softly through the trees. The air is cool. It's one of the few places in London that still feels untouched by time. Every monument here tells a story of lives once lived, of a city's transformation, and of the people who shaped it. Among the 170,000 buried at Highgate, there are many artists, engineers, writers, scientists, and revolutionaries. Some of Highgate's notable tenants include philosopher Karl Marx, author Douglas Adams, the singer George Michael, musician Malcolm McLaren, and sculptor Henry Moore, but my personal favorite scientist Michael Faraday. Their names may be fading, but their influence built the London we know today. By the early 20th century, Highgate's glory began to fade. The cost of upkeep rose, families moved away, and graves were slowly abandoned. Nature slowly reclaimed the hill. The ivy, the foxes, and the silence returned. For decades, the cemetery was left to decay, its paths lost beneath the undergrowth. Then, in 1975, a group of local volunteers decided to act. They formed the Friends of Highgate Cemetery Trust, a charity that still maintains and restores the cemetery today. The Friends of Highgate Cemetery Trust care for over 50 acres of woodland, monuments, and wildlife. Their work is delicate, preserving history without erasing its age. They balance nature and memory, allowing the wilderness to stay, but ensuring the past remain open and safe. If you'd like to support their work, you can donate directly through their website mentioned at the beginning of the video. Every contribution helps protect one of Britain's most extraordinary historic landscapes. Today, Highgate is both a sanctuary for history and a sanctuary for life. The cemetery's trees are home to owls, woodpeckers, while wildflowers cover the graves once meticulously kept. It remains a place where the city can still breathe, a reminder that even in death, nature endures. In 1836, Parliament passed a law allowing private companies to build cemeteries beyond the city limits. One of those companies, the London Cemetery Company, purchased 17 acres on Highgate Hill, the land once owned by the Ashwood family. Their estate overlooked Hampstead Heath. The site was chosen for its views, clean air, and association with moral respectability. Construction began in 1838, and the cemetery officially opened on May 20th, 1839. Admission was by ticket, 1 shilling to walk the grounds and admire what was called the romantic solemnity of death. Within weeks, it became one of London's most fashionable attractions. The cemetery design combined landscape gardening with moral architecture. The original plan placed the chapel, the Circle of Lebanon, and Egyptian Avenue along the ridge of the hill, while the winding path led visitors through the shaded woodland. The chapel itself was divided into Anglican and dissenting halves, a reminder that even in death, class and creed still matter to some extent. Highgate soon expanded, and in 1854, a new section was added onto the eastern side of Swains Lane, linked by a tunnel running beneath the road. This east cemetery doubled the capacity and offered more affordable plots to London's ever-growing middle class. It was here. At its height, the cemetery was a business empire. Families paid annual fees for maintenance, gardeners, stonemasons, and gravediggers all lived on site. The company produced its own guidebooks and employed uniformed attendants to lead visitors through the monuments. By the 1870s, more than 30,000 burials had taken place. But beneath its success lay financial instability. As the century turned, income fell, and by the 1930s, the cemetery was struggling. The London Cemetery Company went bankrupt in 1960, leaving the gates effectively abandoned. For 15 years, the place lay open to vandals and thieves. Many of the marble angels lost their heads, not to time, but to souvenir bounty hunters. The turning point came in 1975, when a local historian named John Pateman helped founded the Friends of Highgate Cemetery Trust. With no public funding, the group began restoring paths, cataloging graves, and re-erecting monuments by hand. Their first major project was the restoration of Egyptian Avenue and the Circle of Lebanon. Both had become dangerously overgrown. Today, there are over 170,000 people buried here, more than 53,000 graves. The cemetery remains privately owned and entirely self-funded through tours, donations, and conservation grants. It is now listed as a Grade 1 historic park, protected as one of Britain's most important landscapes. Amongst Highgate's most visited sites is the grave of Karl Marx. He was buried here in 1883. His tomb later built in the monument we know today, an unmistakable figure in stone, marked by his words, "Workers of all lands unite." Highgate was never just for the rich. It became a place where ideas, as much as people, were laid to rest. Every stone here tells part of London's story, from the Industrial Revolution that filled it to the volunteer movement that saved it. Highgate stands proof that history can decay, yet still endure. Here, stone and ivy record what the city forgets. Every crumbling name, every statue leaning with age, reminds us that history isn't written in books alone, but carved into the landscape around us. It is tended by the hands that care, by people who believe the past still matters. Highgate endures, quiet, patient, eternal, a city within a city, where the story of London continues in silence. Thank you for taking this tour through Highgate Cemetery with me today. Please consider donating to the Highgate Cemetery Friends Club. They are the ones who maintain this beautiful property and allow us to visit.